Hey everybody, welcome once again to DVD Tuesdays, the only DVD review show that alternates between anime and mostly Japanese live action films on a week-to-week basis. Today I'm going to be talking about a very odd, sort of interesting art house indie-ish film called Bright Future, which once again stars Tadanobu Asano because he's in literally everything. At least everything I've seen, mostly because most of the Japanese films I know are films that my cousin introduced me to, and he's a huge fan of Tadanobu Asano, so he probably watched this just because he was in it, and because it comes from a horror director named Kiyoshi Kurosawa. But anyway, Bright Future is a fucking strange movie. I would most compare it to something like a Wes Anderson film, or just maybe an element of mumblecore to it. It's very slow and very odd, and it's definitely about, as the back cover says, urban ennui. I would definitely say it's about urban ennui, but handled without a lot of dialogue explaining itself. This is definitely a movie for people who like to not have their hand held and to be asked to interpret what's happening for themselves and to try and understand the character motivations, as best you can. Because definitely some of the characters are difficult to grasp what they are thinking or what the hell they're doing sometimes. But it's all interesting, and there's a lot of clear symbolism in it, so it's hard to imagine that it's not done with some level of purpose. This is definitely the kind of movie that you are either going to watch and think, wow, that was a bunch of pretentious bullshit, or you're going to think, well, I guess it was interesting, I don't get it. Or you might think, holy shit, that spoke to me on a deep level. This was my cousin Boyd's favorite movie for a while, so it definitely spoke to him on some kind of deep level. And it definitely uses lots of really interesting and odd cinematography. The cinematographer is the same guy who did the same job for Love and Pop by Hideaki Anno, which had plenty of odd cinematography in itself, even more so than this movie, but, Anno's an insane person, but this has lots of interesting shot compositions and styles. So if you want to see something that's just visually interesting without I mean, in terms of the filmmaking, I would say this is probably just shot on like video. Like it's not high fidelity. It doesn't look like film. It's very Japanese in that regard. Like it's just kind of filmed in locations around town. It feels extremely low budget. Like probably the actors cost the majority of the budget, but at the same time, it does enough interesting stuff with the camera work and everything to keep it visually engaging. But the story is basically about these two guys who are working for some shit company that they don't really care about. And they're both kind of antisocial, and they become friends with one another, but there's this sense that they are on different wavelengths in a way, where one guy is more like, man, I hate my job, and other people, aren't they such a bummer? And the other guy is like, literally a psychopath who is going to murder somebody. And so the plot sort of all centers around when one of these characters goes farther than the other is willing to go. Let's put it that way. And then sort of leaves... I'm trying to explain this without spoiling, because this is the kind of movie that very much has two parts. And so to talk about the second part, where more of the meaning is, would spoil the first part where the plot events are. And I do think this would be a better movie to watch without knowing too much. Even the back of the box spoils more than should. Like, you don't read anything about it. Just watch it. The summary tells you too much about what's going to happen in the movie. But yeah, essentially one character goes a little bit farther than the other, and so that other character has to kind of deal with that, like try to ask himself, did I make the right decision by not going that far? Or, will I now do the same? Or like, where do I need to go from here? And so, it's sort of like if the person you looked up to turned out to be insane, and you have to ask yourself, do I still look up to them? Like, do I want to go where they went, or do I want to go somewhere else? Can I make it to the next stage of life. Even though I'm sort of just a bored millennial on suffering urban ennui. And a lot of the film's symbolism revolves around this red jellyfish that the main character is taking care of, and which sort of undergoes an evolution over the course of the movie. This is really hard to describe without just spoiling everything. So again, if you just want to watch, like if what I've said intrigues you at all about the style of movie that this is, I would encourage you to go watch it. It's definitely a movie about sort of the culture of the nihilistic youth, I guess I'd say. It's an absurdist piece, probably, about, like, just searching for meaning and not really finding any, and kind of wondering, what do I do now? Like, now that I know there's no meaning, where do I go from here? So, yeah, that's I guess, what I'd say about it. To describe it in extremely vague terms that are hopefully helpful, I think it's like 2 hours long. I will warn you, this is a slow movie. You know, it's not for the faint of viewing audiences. It's for the kind of person who likes to get into something that is long and slow and difficult to parse. So, check it out if you're into that. And join me next week.